Good afternoon and welcome to today's statewide webinar hosted by SpedTex and Partners Resource Network. My name is Sarah Untersea and I'm part of the SpedTex team. The topic for today's webinar is understanding your child's IEP and the ARD process. A few reminders. This webinar is being recorded and the recording will be posted to the SpedTex site. It usually takes about a week in order for that to be posted, but we will drop our website link in the chat so that you are able to access that once it becomes available. The chat feature is only available today if you require technical assistance. However, you may put questions in the Q&A section. The presenters will review your submissions, which will help us with clarifications and FAQs in the future. There will be no live Q&A today. Is the Special Education Information Center for Texas. We're a collaborative project between Region 10 Education Service Center and the Texas Education Agency. We help parents understand their rights and responsibilities under IDEA and facilitate collaboration when there are concerns between the parent and the school district. We also serve as a resource for educators. We offer support via phone, email, or live chat for families and professionals, webinars, and resources. Our contact information is on the screen. I'm now going to turn it over to Stephanie McLaughlin to share some additional information about Partners Resource Network.
Thank you, Sarah. My name is Stephanie McLaughlin, and I am the Training and Evaluation Specialist for Partners Resource Network. Partners Resource Network is the nonprofit agency that operates the Texas statewide network of Parent Training and Information Centers, or PTIs. PTIs are funded through the Department of Education Office of Special Education Programs. The 4 PTI projects in Texas are known as PACT, PAP, PIN, and TEAM. Our mission at Partners Resource Network is to empower and support Texas families and individuals impacted by disabilities or special healthcare needs. We do this through a network of highly skilled, regionally located coordinators who are knowledgeable in local policies, services, and resources, as well as state and national guidelines. We provide training, information, and one-on-one assistance at no cost to Texas families and youth. We serve parents of children and youth with disabilities from birth to age 26, as well as youth self-advocates between the ages of 14 and 26. Our services are provided in both English and Spanish.
Thanks, Stephanie. Today, we are excited to welcome our presenter, David Mapps. David is the Special Education Technical Assistance Manager at the Texas Education Agency. And at this time, I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to David.
Good afternoon. I'm going to now share my screen and we will get started with our presentation. Welcome to the Understanding Your Child's IEP and the ARD Process webinar. Again, my name is David Mapps, and I'm a Special Education Technical Assistance Manager at the Texas Education Agency. I'm excited to talk to you all today about the ARD process and understanding your child's IEP. Our agenda today starts with a quick overview of the IEP and the ARD process. Then we will take a deeper dive into the evaluation process through a fictional case study. Finally, we will end with frequently asked questions regarding the ARD and IEP process. And our deep dive will be through the IEP and the ARD process. Let's start with the quick review of the special education evaluation process and the overall process for special education. Just a heads up. In this presentation, when I mention parents, this includes biological or adoptive parents, foster parents, guardians, an individual acting in the place of a biological parent with whom the child lives or is legally responsible for the child's welfare, or a surrogate parent. In this section, I'm using the first part of the overview of the Special Education for Parents form to show an overview of the ARD process. This form and a few other forms are required to be given to parents when their child is referred for a special education evaluation or a parent requests an evaluation for special education. The beginning of the overview of special education for parents form discusses what special education is. So what is special education? When a child receives special education, it means that public school provides custom services and instruction specific to the needs of the student. Special education is available because of a federal law called the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, which provides students with disabilities and their parents special legal rights to receive these individualized learning opportunities. So how can special education services help your child? If your child is eligible for special education services, your child will have access to services and supports that are specifically designed to meet the needs your child uniquely has. Special education services provide individualized programming at no cost to you and may include special education teachers and service providers such as occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech and language pathologists, and providers of dyslexia instruction. Okay, so the special education process. Parents have a right to request a special education evaluation at any time. Schools are required to refer a student for an evaluation when a disability is suspected that might require special education services. It is important to understand the steps of the special education process. The first step is the referral for evaluation. This also includes a request for a special education evaluation from a parent. Next, there is the consent to evaluate, then the evaluation. After the evaluation, there is an admissions, review, and dismissal or ARD committee meeting to determine eligibility. If a student qualifies for special education services, an individualized education program or IEP is developed and the IEP is implemented. In this presentation, we will review steps 1 through 5 before we take a deep dive into the IEP process through a fictional case study. The first step is when a referral for special education evaluation is made. A referral is required by law when a public school feels that your child may have a disability that requires special education services to be successful. A referral is called a request for special education evaluation when a parent makes it. A request should be made in writing to the proper staff member. A proper staff member at the school district is the director of special education services or an administrative employee, which can be a campus principal or assistant principal. The school will respond with information on whether it will proceed with the evaluation. The school must respond to a request for special education evaluation that is made in writing within 15 school days. The second step of the evaluation process is consent. You will be asked whether you consent for the school to evaluate your child. Consent to evaluate is permission you choose to give for specially trained personnel to evaluate and assess your child in a specific area, and used by the school to start the timeline by which the school must complete your child's evaluation. With some exceptions, an evaluation must be completed within 45 school days. The third step is the evaluation. The evaluation is done by a group of trained professionals. An evaluation is called a full and individual evaluation, or a full and individual initial evaluation if it is the child's first evaluation, which includes a written report of education recommendations and information about your child's strengths, interests, and challenges. Professionals with training in the suspected disability area must participate. For instance, someone like a licensed dyslexia therapist should participate if dyslexia is suspected. This is done at no cost to you. If you do not agree with the school's evaluation, you may ask for an independent educational evaluation. This would be done by someone who is not employed at the school, and also it is not at a cost to you. The fourth step is when the Admissions, Review, and Dismissal, or ARD committee, meets to determine if your child is eligible for special education services. The ARD committee is a team including you, teachers, school administrators, those with special expertise about your child, and professionals with special education training about the suspected disability. A meeting to discuss your child's evaluation report, identify your child's strengths and areas of need, and then determine whether your child has a disability and the need for special education services. The fifth and final step of the evaluation process is the Individualized Education Program. If your child is eligible for special education services, then the ARD committee will also develop an Individualized Education Program, or an IEP. An IEP is a collection of information that identifies your child's disability, shows your child's current strengths and areas of need, identifies goals and to be worked on, and shows the special education and related services that are required for your child to be successful. This is the student's specially designed instruction. In Texas, the ARD committee determines the specially designed instruction needed for each student as a part of the IEP. And a document that the school must follow once the process for developing it is complete. You consent to your child receiving services. Services would begin as soon as possible. You have the right to participate in the development of the IEP and agree or disagree with your child getting special education services. Just a reminder, more information about your rights as a parent can be found at spedtex.org. There you can find the Parent's Guide to the ARD process, as well as a notice of procedural safeguards in several languages. So now we'll talk about the special education and ARD process through a fictional case study. We're going to be diving deep through this fictional case study for Daniel, a fourth grade student who is currently receiving special education services. Okay, to start off this fictional case study, I'll go over some information about Daniel. Daniel is a fourth grade student who is identified as a student with a specific learning disability in the area of written expression in the third grade. During the initial ARD meeting, the committee determined that Daniel needed goals in the area of written language. Goals were developed to focus on creating grammatically correct sentences using appropriate language and word choice with proper punctuation, capitalization, and word order. The committee also agreed that Daniel would have the following accommodations: graphic organizers, extra time for completion of assignments, and a checklist for grammar rules, as well as a checklist for writing mechanics. Along with those accommodations, Daniel was also given 30 minutes of co-teach support during his writing time. Daniel does not have any behavior difficulties. He turns in his assignments on time, and he is respectful of his peers and teachers. Co-teaching is a service within an inclusive model in which one or more certified professionals share the responsibility of planning, delivery of instruction, and progress monitoring for all students assigned in their classroom. Co-teaching is one of the many ways in which a student receiving special education services receives their specially designed instruction. The annual ARD meeting must be scheduled less than 365 days from the previous ARD meeting. The meeting is scheduled at an agreed upon time between the parent and the school district. The district will send the parent a prior written notice of the meeting, which is delivered at least 5 school days prior to the meeting, unless the parent agrees to waive this 5-day period. The prior written notice identifies which areas will be discussed during the meeting, who has been invited to the meeting, and the time, date, and location of the meeting. The following people are required to participate in the ARD committee: the parent of the student, a general education teacher of the student, a special education teacher of the student, an individual who can interpret the instructional results of the evaluation, and a representative of the district who is qualified to provide or supervise special education services, understands general education, and knows the resources available to the district. There are other people who may be invited to attend the meeting, such as a representative from the Career and Technical Education or a member of the Language Proficiency Assessment Committee, if applicable. Because the other people are not needed, they will not be invited to Daniel's ARD committee. At the age of 14 or earlier, if appropriate, Daniel would also be invited to attend the meeting. The ARD committee will review previous goals that were created for Daniel. They will look at the progress Daniel has made and determine if any of those goals and or objectives need to continue or if new goals and objectives need to be developed. The committee will also discuss the services Daniel currently receives. Services includes things such as accommodations like the extra time, modifications of the curriculum that a student receives, or related services like occupational therapy. The committee will discuss how well Daniel has performed with the services he has received and whether those services continue to be necessary. Daniel's parents will also be able to give input into both the developing of the goals and or objectives, as well as discussions about the continuation of services that Daniel receives. A prior written notice was sent to Daniel's parents, identifying when the meeting will take place, where the meeting will take place, and who will attend the meeting, as well as what will be discussed during the meeting. Both of Daniel's parents are present for his ARD. The other members that are present for the meeting are Mr. Jones, Daniel's 4th grade general education teacher, Mrs. Smith, Daniel's special education teacher, and Dr. Brown, the principal at Daniel's school. No one else is invited to participate in this meeting due to Daniel's age and the services that he's receiving. During the discussion, the ARD committee determined that Daniel was making progress. Mr. Jones brought writing samples from things Daniel had completed in class. Mrs. Smith brought information to the meeting to show how she worked with Daniel. She had a chart to show the number of sentences Daniel wrote with correct punctuation and capitalization. The committee looked at all of the data that was presented by Daniel's teachers, as well as the information presented by Daniel's parents based off of his homework, and determined that Daniel had mastered most of his goal. The goal was rewritten to include updates and new information. The following goal was agreed upon by the committee. By the end of the IEP year, when given extended time, a checklist for grammar and writing mechanics, and a graphic organizer, Daniel will write 3 grammatically correct sentences on a single topic with correct punctuation and capitalization. The time frame, this identifies the amount of time in the goal period, and usually it's specific to the number of weeks or days of completion. In this scenario, the time frame is the end of the IEP year. The conditions. These specify how progress towards the goal will occur. The conditions describe the specific resources that must be present for a student to reach the goal and should outline or explain what facilitates learning for the student. For Daniel, the conditions are extended time, a checklist for grammar and writing mechanics, and a graphic organizer. The behavior. This identifies the performance that is being monitored. It presents an action that can be directly observed and measured. In this case, the behavior is writing 3 sentences on a single topic with no more than 2 punctuation and capitalization errors. The criterion. This identifies how much, how often, or to what level the behavior must occur to demonstrate that the goal has been achieved. The goal criterion specifies the amount of growth that is expected within the goal timeframe. For Daniel, this is 4 out of 5 trials for no more than 2 consecutive grading periods. The ARD committee agreed that Daniel would receive 30 minutes of co-teach support daily during his writing time. The ARD committee also agreed that Daniel would continue to receive the following accommodations in class, as well as on all writing assessments, which include the STAR: extended time for completion, a checklist for grammar and writing mechanics, and a graphic organizer. It is important to note that all accommodations that take place in the classroom are not available on the STAR test, but many of them are. Accommodations change how the content is taught, made accessible, or assessed. Accommodations do not change what the student is expected to master. Modifications change what the student is expected to master. Course, activity, and our curriculum objectives are altered to meet the student's needs. In this case, Daniel only needs accommodations and not modifications. At the end of the meeting, all members signed the signature page, and the parent was given a copy of the IEP paperwork to take home. For more information about the ARD process, please see the Parent's Guide to the Admissions Review and Dismissal Process, which is found at SpedText. And in the second half of the overview for the Special Education for Parents form. Okay, now we will move on to some frequently asked questions that we at the agency are often asked. Just a heads up, I will likely refer to school throughout these questions and responses. Unless I state otherwise, school could be interchangeable with district, district school campus, or an open enrollment charter. So the first question is, what are my options if the school is not implementing my child's IEP? So, if the school is not implementing your child's IEP, you have the following options. You can request an ARD meeting to discuss and clarify expectations and request a written plan from the school on how the school plans to implement the IEP. You can contact the school principal or special education director of the school district. You may also request mediation services. Mediation is a voluntary process. If both you and the school voluntarily agree to participate in mediation, the TEA makes the arrangements and pays for the mediation. The mediators are not employees of the TEA or of the school district that is involved in the education or care of the child who is the subject of the mediation process. And they cannot have any personal or professional interests that would conflict with their objectivity. The mediator's role is to be objective and not take the side of either party at the mediation. The goal of mediation is to assist you and the school in reaching an agreement that satisfies you both. Or you may file a special education complaint with the Texas Education Agency. The next question. How do I work with my school to schedule the ARD committee meeting on a date and time that works for our family and the school? If the proposed date and time for the ARD committee meeting does not fit into your schedule, you may call the school and give them dates and times in which you are available. Parents may request to participate in the ARD committee via telephone or virtually so that the date and time may work for both the parent and the school. How often should my child's PLAF be changed or updated? And moving on to the next question. Sorry, I read the wrong question. So moving on to the next question. I requested an ARD committee meeting and the school declined my request. Can the school decline my request? Yes, the school can deny your request for an ARD committee meeting. However, the school should provide you with a written notice explaining why they have denied your request for an ARD committee meeting. You can always challenge this request by using one of the methods described in question 1. Now we have it. The next question. How often should my child's PLAF be changed or updated? The PLAF is updated at least annually at the annual ARD meeting. The PLAF can be updated more frequently if the child has mastered their goals and objectives prior to the annual ARD meeting, is not making progress towards their annual goals, or has begun to exhibit behaviors which may require additional goals and objectives or services. Moving on to the next question. We agreed on something in the ARD committee meeting, and when I received my copy of the paperwork, it was not reflected in the document. What are my options for addressing this issue? Well, if what was discussed in the meeting is not reflected in your copy of the paperwork, you should reach out to your child's special education teacher. There may be some clerical errors in the paperwork that you received, or you may not have received the correct copy. If what you agreed upon was not captured during the meeting, another meeting may be needed may need to be held to make sure that all agreed upon recommendations are reflected in the student's IEP. The next question is, at the annual ARD meeting, a program was developed for our child. During the year, we noticed our child is not making progress. What can we do? Well, if your child is not making progress with the current program that was developed, you should contact the school and schedule another ARD meeting. During this meeting, you can discuss your child's progress and make any updates or changes necessary to the current program so that your child can make the appropriate progress. The next question is, I received something called an IEP amendment to change something in my child's IEP. What is this, and can the school make changes outside of an ARD committee meeting? An IEP amendment is something that takes place after an annual ARD meeting. An IEP amendment is possible if the parent and the school agree not to convene an ARD committee meeting for the purpose of making changes to the IEP, and the school has developed a written document to amend or modify the current IEP. On to our next question. What should a measurable goal look like, and when are they required? IDEA requires that all students who receive special education services have measurable annual goals included in their IEP. According to IDEA, measurable annual goals are designed to meet the child's needs that result from the child's disability, to enable the child to be involved in and make progress in the general education curriculum, and meet each of the child's other educational needs that result from the child having a disability. As we discussed earlier in the presentation, 4 parts of a measurable goal are the time frame, condition, behavior, and criterion. The time frame identifies the amount of time in the goal period and usually specifies the number of weeks or days for completion. The condition specifies how the progress towards the goal occurs. Conditions describe the specific resources that must be present for a student to reach the goal and should outline and explain what facilitates learning for the student. The condition of the goal should link to the behavior being measured. For example, a goal relating to reading comprehension may require the use of a graphic organizer. The use of the graphic organizer is the condition. Behavior. This identifies the performance that is being monitored. It represents an action that can be directly observed and measured. The criterion. This identifies how much, how often, or what level the behavior must occur to demonstrate that the goal has been achieved. The goal criterion specifies the amount of growth that is expected within the goal timeframe. Okay, let's discuss the next question. Who should be at my child's ARD committee meeting? As a parent, can I invite someone to my child's ARD committee meeting? The ARD committee must include the following people: the parent or guardian of the student, at least one general education teacher of the student, at least one special education teacher of the student, or one special education provider of the student, a representative of the school district who can interpret the instructional implications of the evaluation results, at the discretion of the parent or the school district, other individuals who have knowledge or special expertise regarding the student, including related services personnel as appropriate, and whenever appropriate, the student with the disability. Other people who may attend as necessary are a representative of any agency that is likely to be responsible for providing or paying for transition services, a representative from a career and technical education or CTE, a professional staff member who is on the Language Proficiency Assessment Committee or the LPAC. And this is not an exhaustive list of all of the individuals who may be invited to participate in an ARD committee. Okay, the next question. What are my options if I disagree with the program the ARD committee presented? If you disagree with the decisions of the ARD committee, you will be offered a single opportunity to have the committee recess for a period of time not to exceed 10 school days, unless you and the school mutually agree otherwise. If you accept the offer to recess and reconvene, the ARD committee must schedule the reconvened meeting at a mutually agreed upon time and place. During the recess, the members must consider alternatives, gather additional information, prepare further documentation, and/or obtain additional resources, persons who may assist in enabling the ARD committee to reach mutual agreement. If the ARD committee meets again and you continue to disagree, unless the disagreement involves the initial provision of services for which consent is required, the school must implement the IEP that was decided appropriate for your child. Next question. Can I pick and choose the services my child should receive, or do I have to accept everything the ARD committee proposes? You are not required to agree with all of the proposed services. However, the proposals provided from the school for the IEP are so that the student will receive a free and appropriate public education. The ARD committee must come to a consensus about the services that will be provided for the student. As previously discussed, if you disagree with the services proposed, you may be offered a one-time recess. If agreement cannot be reached, the school must implement the IEP. Next question. What does meaningful parent participation look like? Meaningful parent participation starts with the district notifying the parent early enough to ensure that they have an opportunity to attend the ARD committee meeting and scheduling the meeting at a mutually agreed upon time and place. The parent must be provided a prior written notice that tells the purpose, time, and location of the meeting, informs the parents of who will participate in the meeting, and ensure the parent understands the notice. The school must give you a copy of your child's IEP at no cost. If you are unable to speak English and your native language is Spanish, the school must provide a written copy or audio recording of your child's IEP translated into Spanish. If you are unable to speak English and your native language is not Spanish, the school must make a good faith effort to provide a written copy or audio recording of your child's IEP translated into your native language. If you are unable to speak English and your native language is not a written language, the school must take steps to ensure that your child's IEP is translated orally or by other means into your native language. A written translation means that all of the text in your child's IEP is translated in written form. The school can provide you with an audio recording of the ARD committee meeting if you were assisted by an interpreter, or a translation of the meeting, as long as all of the content in your child's IEP is orally translated and recorded. The parent is also encouraged to ask questions, bring concerns, and make comments throughout the meeting to ensure that they understand and are in agreement with the decisions made during the ARD committee meeting. Next question. What can I do if I am not able to attend the ARD committee meeting on the date the school has on the notice I received? You can contact the school and ask to have the meeting rescheduled at a mutually agreeable date and time. Okay, let's move on to the next question. If I revoke special education services, can my child receive services through 504? If you revoke consent for special education services and your child is determined to have a disability, your child may qualify for services via Section 504. These are not the same services, as 504 does not provide specially designed instruction for students with disabilities, but accommodations for the student's disability. All right, we will move on to the next question. What is prior written notice and when should I receive it? A prior written notice is a notice sent to a parent or guardian in writing regarding your child's special education needs. In Texas, the prior written notice must be given at least 5 days before it proposes or refuses to take any action unless you agree to a shorter time frame. A prior written notice must be given before the school district initiates or changes the identification, evaluation, or educational placement of your child. The notice must include a description of the actions that the school proposes or refuses to take, and an explanation of why the school is proposing or refusing to take that action, a description of each evaluation procedure, assessment, record, or report the school used in deciding to propose or refuse the action, a statement that you have the protections under the procedural safeguards of the IDEA, an explanation of how to get a copy of the Notice of Procedural Safeguards, contact information for individuals and organizations that can help you in understanding IDEA, a description of the other choices that your child's ARD committee considers and the reasons why those choices were rejected, and a description of other reasons why the school proposes or refuses the action. The notice must be in written language, understandable to the general public, and must be translated into your native language or other mode of communication unless it clearly is not feasible to do so. All right, we will move on to the next question. This is the final question that we have. When should my child's special education services begin? He was just evaluated, and we recently had his first ARD committee meeting. If you have given consent for initial services to begin, the services can begin immediately if you waived your 5 days prior written notice. If you do not waive the 5-day prior written notice, the services will begin 5 school days after the consent for initial services was signed. Before we wrap up, I want you to provide you with some links to resources that you may want to review. Two documents in particular, the Parent's Guide to the ARD process and the Notice of Procedural Safeguards, will definitely be useful in understanding the special education process and your rights as a parent. Note that these are currently being updated because we've had quite a few commissioners' rules changes over the recent months. And the overview of the special education for parents form that we discussed earlier is also useful to get a simpler understanding of the special education process. Finally, you have some links to relevant Texas Administrative Code provisions and a link to the TEA guidance for the comprehensive evaluation of special education specific learning disabilities. And that's also being updated and revised due to the commissioner's rules. Thank you for having TEA present to you today. Please continue to visit SpedTex with questions and to find resources. Have a great day, and we will see you again in our next SpedTex webinar. And now I will turn it back over to Sarah.
Thank you so much, David. That was such fantastic information, and we really appreciate your time today. Thank you to everyone for being here today. And at this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Stephanie McLaughlin to share some additional information about Partners Resource Network.
Thank you, Sarah. Our regional coordinators at Partners Resource Network are available to help you understand and navigate the special education process. If you are not already connected with your regional coordinator, give us a call and we can get you connected. For more information, you can check out our website at prntexas.org. You can also like and follow us at Facebook at PRN Texas. Thank you.
Questions about special education? Contact us at SpedTex, your source for special education information. We're happy to help. Our contact information is on the screen.